All right, now we're doing part two of my top 15 albums of 2017. We just finished talking about Kendrick Lamar's Damn, an album that topped many other lists, and yet I know 10 albums that are even better. Pitchfork, what are you thinking? You didn't even consider this Topo Beats Fantasy Club. Oh, snap! This is actually a sick album. This is probably one of the ones on this list that aren't as well known, but I really hope they will be. Not because of this video, of course, but just in general. Um, so this is a Japanese producer who makes future bass music. He sings on a lot of the tracks too. Future bass is one of those like little flash in the pan micro genres that are so based in excess that they almost become self parody immediately. Kind of like vaporwave or sea punk or I don't know. I don't want to list microgenres. So you know the just kind of big wonky chords and cute samples and dolphin noises and crazy little synth runs and stuff. It's just so all also over the top. And it seemed like it was gonna kind of just like I said, like a flash in the pan. It was just kind of burn out in its own excess. But then you get producers like this, who really feel like there's an emotional attachment there between them and the music, um, and that are taking it seriously and sincerely. And the music on this is just so joyful and so culturally broad and reaching, with its samples and with its kind of vapor wavy nostalgic vibe, but then also very cutting edge, and it feels like it knows all the cool things you know. Um, what it reminds me a lot of, in a lot of ways, of is World's End Girlfriend, actually, where there's that same very reaching into everything approach. But they're not just interested in like kind of skimming the surfaces of all these different genres and all of these different movements, but diving in and grabbing like just the coolest, craziest part and ripping that out and building a never before seen amalgamation of just the craziest, heaviest trap beats in one part and like the catchiest mantra type pop hooks of another part, and then like crazy synth runs out of speedcore or something, just smushing it all together. And the result is something. It is like a fantasy club. It feels like the all blue of clubs, if you'll forgive a One Piece reference, where just all the genres are playing at once and you love it. So yeah, check this one out. It's so much fun. Next we have, ooh, getting into some grime. I listened to a ton of grime this year. I kind of got a little caught up with the genre. There was a lot of rappers in the UK making this sort of music that I just had never heard of. So I was diving into their discographies, and then Stormzy, who I had heard of because of his remix of Ultralight Beam, came out with this album, and it just blew me away. I think this is possibly my favorite grime project ever. It has all the stuff that I want from the genre. Like half the songs are just these intense, relentless verbal assaults where he's just rapping his head off and it's an intoxicating British accent with like all of this slang that I've never heard before. Rapping about like football players and saying waste man and stuff. It's like, yeah. Um, and the beats on these are crazy too, like that awesome grimy feeling of like halfway between club and deep trap, and but then the other half are these like soulful, meditative, sometimes sad, sometimes loving, sometimes longing, um, ruminations about his life and his family and his reputation, and this whole feeling of being like a young man, um, trying to prove himself, trying to make himself in this genre. Like it's a story we've heard in rap so many times before, but the intensity here and the fact that like I don't know. I don't know how to put it. There's an authenticity in grime that maybe it's just because I'm an outsider to it and I can't my authenticity meter isn't as cynical or critical yet. But there's stuff he does on this album that I've also heard American rappers do, but for some reason it feels more real here. Like things like sampling him talking to his mom, sampling radio announcers announcing tracks and stuff, sampling messages to his girlfriend and stuff. It feels so real. It feels like an actual little window into his life that we see this bolsterous, powerful persona and then this kind of retreat back inwards and meditation and contemplation and introspection. And it doesn't feel like either of them are fake because they kind of reinforce each other like this. So yes, a really cool album. The song "Bad Boys," especially the third track. Oh my god, just I would listen to it like endlessly when I first heard it, over and over and over again. It nails this completely entrancing feeling that grime gets sometimes. And I don't know if I can put it into words. You just gotta listen to it. Okay, next. Whoa, this is a major change. This is an album very different than pretty much all the other albums on this list. Mount Eerie, A Crow Looked at Me. This is a sad, sad, sad album. So Mount Eerie, formerly known as the Microphones, is this guy Phil Evelyn. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Evelyn, who's been making music for a long, long time, and all of it has been sad. And it's interesting to me. His early work, which I think is still my favorite, is this like it's very intense and kind of suicidal, and it's talking very poetically about death, and then sometimes also very brutally and straightforwardly about life. And it's some of the most emotionally devastating music I've ever listened to. Like when I'm feeling really, really sad, that's the sort of stuff I turn to. But I recently read an interview with him where he was talking about the music from this era, and like specific songs that I like really think of in this way. And he's like, looking back at it, I really had nothing to be sad about. Like maybe I was in a relationship that wasn't working out too well. Whatever, it's not that bad. Um, and then to contrast that, this album is written after his wife died when she was quite young, and they have a very young daughter together. And the title of the album, Crow Looked at Me, is something that his daughter says that he's quoting, and it's all kind of about the aftermath of her death and how his little family is dealing with it and how his daughter is processing it and how he's processing it. So this is like real, real, real sadness. But it's definitely less intense than his older music. It's a much more mature, adult, sophisticated sadness where he knows now, I think, how to like not like keep himself in check. It's not like it's diminished. It's not like it's limited, but it's I don't know. I don't know. It's very very I don't know. It's sad, man. And even the title of the first track and the first single he put out, "Real Death," I think captures it. That up until this point, he had been kind of thinking about and singing about fake death. He'd been thinking about death from the outside, as the big black ship and the big black cloud that presses you to the ground, and um, but now it's real death, and he talks about it beautifully but plainly, and really talks about what his life is like afterwards. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if I would recommend it to just anybody anytime. It's gonna bum you out. But unlike his other albums, I would say it's not just sort of like ruthlessly kind of crushing you and being like, you'll never be happy, you'll never be happy. Which, listening to some of his other albums, you start to feel like you're never going to be happy. But with this one, it's like, you get to the end of it, and you're just like, all right, I'm grieving, but that's just another period in my life. So I don't know. It's very interesting. And I heard, I haven't listened to it yet, but I heard he put out another single and there's another album coming soon. So I have no idea what it's going to be like, but I'm very curious. Okay, next we have, another very emotionally powerful album. Tyler the Creator's Flower Boy. So the big story on this album is that Tyler kind of outs himself. He comes out of the closet on this album to some extent as a bisexual or perhaps entirely homosexual man. I'm not sure. I think he's probably bisexual. But the interesting thing though was that like kind of after it came out, people put together a compilation of like tweets and quotes from interviews and other song lyrics that when reevaluated in this new light make it like kind of obvious in retrospect. Um, which is kind of like funny and interesting, but at the same time like very devastating to think about this guy who, if you haven't listened to his music, he's very very outspoken. Has always never he's never ever shied away from a lyric, no matter how gruesome or grim his comedy is, or how like brutally he's tearing down sacred cows and stuff. Like this guy has no limits. Think of a guy like that in the closet and feeling unable to express such a fundamental part of himself. It's very sad, and you almost start to think that a lot of the kind of abrasive things on his previous albums, whether it's the production or the lyrics, or just sort of the attitude that it reflects, um, was an expression of that frustration and of that fear and of that kind of directionless rage. Um, and kind of reflecting that on this album, things have changed somewhat. And his production, well, oh man, I don't even know where to start with his production, but it feels a lot more open and free and like, I don't know, there's some really beautiful moments on this album, especially in the production. The production feels not that different than his previous albums. It still kind of has that kind of nostalgic, um, it's hard to describe, but before I always thought of it as sort of ironic. You know, it was sort of like an ironic, distanced nostalgia. Um, but here, all of those things have kind of been turned back to the obverse side and embraced fully and sincerely, and they're all the more beautiful for it. I'm so happy with the response that people have had to this album, that it's been getting great reviews and people are really championing and encouraging and praising his braveness and coming out and this beautiful artistic way that he had done it in. It reminds me of like when Channel Orange came out and sort of a similar thing happened about the same subject matter. And I just like people were kind of rough on Tyler for a while. People saw, you know, Frank Ocean, of course, making some of the best music ever. Earl Sweatshirt really reaching amazing places and introspective, emotionally delving existential rap. And then they kind of saw Tyler kind of mutate into almost self-parody. And, you know, even if you were a fan of it, you were a fan of it in this sort of like extreme uh, embrace of like, yeah, fuck everybody sort of way. But the fact that he was able to kind of emerge from that place and that he's been so welcomed, and that people were willing to give him a chance to tell this sort of story and to show this sort of side to himself. When, as I've said, it's so out of character from what we often see from him. It's beautiful. The whole circumstances around it are beautiful, and like I said, the music, um, some of the beat changes and stuff are just sublime, and it really feels like a weight has been taken off of him. So not only is this great, but I am so excited to see where his career is going from here. Like, I don't want to project too much psychologically. I don't want to present what I've just said as like a definitive thesis and then be able to extrapolate from there what his next album is going to sound like. At the end of the day, he's still just an extremely creative, extremely creatively all over the map person. So he's gonna do like whatever the fuck he wants, and it's probably gonna be great. Yeah. What an album. Okay. Next is Jalen Dark Origami. This is another huge genre shift from what we've been talking about before. Jalen makes really intense, complex footwork music. If you don't know what footwork is, imagine like dance music, the final boss of like dance music, where you want to dance, you can feel the rhythms within you, but the rhythms are so complex and fractal and all over the place that uh, you also know that it's impossible to dance. This music is, I don't know, like the genre interests me a lot, and sort of the aesthetics of the genre, that it mixes that intensity and complexity with um, kind of, well, I don't know, like it's the danciness of it, right? Um, but it only works if it's really precise and it's really like that every note has been thought out. Um, and here, I think Jalen has origamied herself a masterpiece, really unseen in like any other footwork release, where every track just surges with this new intensity. Um, but like I said, like no matter how wild it feels, no matter how much it feels like Jalen is just like spamming you with this one song, you realize that the true hypnosis of it and the true infectiousness of it and the way that it affects you so much emotionally is because of the precision and because of all this, the foresight and the meticulous crafting of all the different harmonies and counterpoints and melodies. And yeah, I don't know, check it out. I listened to it a lot at work, again under circumstances where I just really had to focus, and it's just this kind of all-encompassing energy. It's very cool. Yeah, check it out. The album cover is really cool too. It's an elephant. Somehow this really captures the music, I think. But I don't know if I can explain why. Alright, that's it so far. We looked at these albums. What's next? What's next? I don't know. There's 5 more. Can you guess what they are? Can I remember what? No, I can remember what they are. I can only think of 4 of them. What's wrong with me? This is my own list. So if you can guess it, when I can't even guess it right now. No, wait, okay. This is 4. Okay, well, we'll find out in the next video. Stupid.